The Government of Canada, following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13th, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States. This includes steel products worth $12.6 billion and aluminum products worth $3 billion, as well as additional imported U.S. goods worth $14.2 billion for a total of $29.8 billion.
Today, we lowered our policy interest rate by 25 basis points to 2.75%. The Canadian economy ended 2024 in good shape. Inflation has been close to the 2% target since last summer. However, in recent months, the pervasive uncertainty created by continuously changing U.S. tariff threats have shaken business and consumer confidence. This is restraining household spending intentions and businesses' plans to hire and invest. Looking ahead, the trade conflict with the United States can be expected to weigh on economic activity while also increasing prices and inflation. The Governing Council will proceed carefully with any further changes to our policy rate, given the need to assess both the upward pressure on inflation from higher costs and the downward pressure from weaker demand. Inflation has remained close to the 2% target. The temporary GST-HST holiday has lowered some consumer prices. January inflation came in a little firmer than expected at 1.9%. Inflation is forecast to increase to about 2.5% in March with the end of the tax break. Business intentions to raise prices have increased as they cope with higher costs related to both uncertainty and tariffs. At the same time, inflation expectations have moved up as Canadians brace for the possibility of higher prices. Certainty that weighs on household and business spending tends to put downward pressure on inflation, and new tariffs will hurt our exports and weaken business investment. Costs are rising too, and this will put upward pressure on inflation. A weaker Canadian dollar and new retaliatory tariffs both make imports more expensive. Businesses are also telling us that uncertainty itself has costs and affect the prices that Canadians will face. We ended 2024 on a solid economic footing. We are now facing a new crisis. Depending on the extent and duration of new U.S. tariffs, the economic impact could be severe. The uncertainty alone is already causing harm. Monetary policy cannot offset the impacts of a trade war. Obviously, retaliatory tariffs, it's an extra charge on U.S. goods coming into Canada. That adds costs. There are a number of new costs that businesses are facing, and ultimately those will get passed through to the prices that Canadians face. We've been very clear, monetary policy cannot offset the impacts of a trade war. We're going to get weaker economic activity, we're going to get higher prices, higher inflation. We can't change that. But what we can do is limited by the need to control inflation. We can't lean against weaker growth and higher inflation at the same time. We're focused on assessing the upward pressure on inflation coming from new costs and the downward pressures on inflation from weaker demand, both external demand and domestic demand. There are a number of direct cost pressures involved with tariffs. The Canadian dollar is depreciating. Anything you import is more expensive as a result. Retaliatory tariffs add an extra charge on anything coming in from across the U.S. border. That increases costs. Businesses are holding more inventories to try to manage those things. These things all have costs. Somebody has to pay for those costs, and ultimately they get passed through to the consumer. It's going to depend a lot what the U.S. does with their trade policy. We'll have to see.
So how should Canadians prepare themselves financially and otherwise for that?
Seeing saving rates go up, discretionary spending go down. These are the kinds of things that are going to feed through and have an impact. I think Canadians are responsible. They're reading the news. They're watching this with the same level of concern we have, and they're preparing in the best way they can.
I mean, given the tariff threats, given the depreciation of the Canadian dollar, given the clear intention of the Canadian government to respond with retaliatory tariffs, you can understand why people's perceptions that inflation could go up have increased. they see there could be some new costs, and that's going to cause new price increases. And monetary policy can't stop that. Some prices are going to go up.